For today's short meditation, let us look into Isaiah chapter 53 verses 5. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. Today I'd like to focus on this verse, which especially emphasizes on his wounds. It's because of his wounds we are healed. When it comes to the Christ crucifixion, we know the story and we come across it each and every year, and we know what are his sayings and all. But today I would like to give more emphasis on the application that we could bring out from this verse, especially in this verse 5. There is a painting done by Rembrandt, one of the Dutch painter. He painted the painting of the crucifixion. Nowadays we have a lot of entertainments through many medias. In the olden times they had through these paintings, and one of the famous painter, he painted the crucifixion of Jesus. If we look closely in that painting, especially the painting done by Rembrandt, we can see that our attention first goes to the cross. Then we see Jesus, and then there's a crowd, and then there's a few empty places at the end. When we see closely at the empty space in that painting, it's something kind of very wide. The painter who painted that picture, he said that when he was painting, he felt that it was he himself. It was because of he himself. So at the end of that painting, we see there's a void where it shows a reflection. Like, it's not just that the soldiers, it's not just that people at that time who have crucified him, it was even that painter who painted that painting, he reminded himself. It was a reminder for himself that he himself was crucifying Jesus. It was because of his sin, and he had that blood in his hand. So I'd like to emphasize that even to us. You see, when we come across, it's very easy for us to say that when Jesus was crucified, it was that people, it was those people, it was his own people, the Jews, were crucifying him. Sometimes it has become very simple to say that Christ died for the sin of the world, for the sin of the world. That's the common idea, that's the basic idea. It becomes very simple when it comes to that term, saying that Christ died for the whole world, died for the sin of the world. And it is easy for us to say that he was being crucified, his own people crucified. And even we can see in his crucifixion, we see how scheming Caiaphas was and how Pilate, everybody were involved. And we even see how ruthless the mobs were during his crucifixion. And that time we see even how cowardly the disciples were. It is very easy for us when we go through the Gospels, when we come across his end days, it's easy for us, oh, this has happened, he has died for the world, and we see how the people were, how the disciples were, how the mobs, how the soldiers were. They were like this. It's easy to point out. But it's another thing for us to focus today is what about you and me? It was even you and me who put him on the cross. It was not just that people on that day. What I like to emphasize is that it is not just that those people, it was not just that they did it, it was also I who nailed him on the cross. It was also you who nailed him on the cross. That realization is quite different. It hits different, you know. We have sympathy sometimes when we say that Christ died for the sin of the world. Christ has died for the whole world, for all the people. It gives sympathy. But when we realize that he died even for you and me, and it was because of you and me, you know, it was not because of that time, it was not because of those people, it was even you and me. We may not be present at that time. We may not have been alive when he died. But he died for you and me. It is our sin which brought him to his place. Let us try to realize ourselves that it is not just for the world, it was especially for you and me. And it was you and me that who put him on the cross. Even we should take the blame. It's not just we can blame those people who were there at the present. It is also applicable for you and me today. When we closely look into that shadow that empty space and think that, oh, it was even you and me. Because of us that Christ bore this penalty, we can boldly say that he was wounded for me. It was just for me that he was wounded. Not for you, not for others, but for me. That self-realization should come to us. Sometimes we pass on each and every day. We may go on telling to other people, proclaiming his good news and telling that he died for you, he died for us. But that realization should be strong, where that should be our foundation. And that realization where we say that he was wounded for me, only for me. Because of me, he was wounded for me. When we get that realization is when we get closer to him. That's when we get the whole aspect of him. He's getting those punishment for us. And there's a quote which says, Calvary's cross reveals man's hatred for God and God's love for man. As we gather here today where we remember that day that Jesus was crucified, let us remember that was the hatred that humanity showed to God. But that same cross is what God showed to us as love. That is God's love for man. But the same cross was the hatred towards God. But when we look in God's perspective, it is God's love for us. Let us accept this love and let us not push this love away. Rather, let us embrace this love that God has given us on this cross. And let us continue to share that with our fellow brothers and sisters. Amen.